Hey there, Kiri Murray here from the Decision Table, and where we look at the problem, the solution, and instead of widening the gap from problem to solution that we see, but figuring out some great insights, some great conversations around how can we narrow that gap from problem to solution. This is going to be a pretty fast one today because fast for me, right? Because in 24 minutes, I have a meeting to be on. So I just wanted to, and I think actually what could be interesting about this conversation today is that it might be in two parts. You know, I am seeing a lot at the moment in some of the circles that I'm involved in and beginning to have the conversation around the second wave. I know for many of you, what is the second wave? What are we talking about when we go into that? Hey, if you are a Facebook user, give StreamYard just before we move on, give StreamYard permission to have you message. And that way I know who's saying hey to me, but hey, and wherever you are in the world right now, some big love. I'm in Sydney, Australia, and the weather is not looking that good today, but we are staying focused. So here's the thing, the first wave, I guess what we're talking about in that way could look like the whole COVID hit the world. What happened to the economy? What happened to us, you, in where you are and what's going on? Hey, in Texas and the USA, so a second wave is likely. Exactly. So I kind of want to start the conversation on what that second wave could look like, what it's going to look like. I don't know, you don't know, we don't know, but I think there is a certainty that it probably is going to be coming. Like, I really do. I think that there is a second wave to come. And here's the thing I'd be asking right now about the first wave. What was it like for you when COVID hit? What was it like for you when the world stopped being able to have access to the outside world, to the global world, and maybe you were much more centralized or localized to what you could do and how you could do it? How did that change what you were doing and what you are doing now? And I would be starting to ask the questions. If you weren't prepared for it before, how can you be prepared for it going forward? So I mean, I'd love, and I think this is why I think it's going to be in two parts, this conversation. Like, we'll do one this morning, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow morning, depending on the comments, the thoughts that you guys put into the comments. If you've got questions around the second wave, if you've got some absolute disagreement that there's going to be a second wave, tell me why. Let's have a conversation. Let's begin this, because I think that this is a hot topic right now, that not only are we either, in some cases, you're starting to come out the other side of this, as in, you know, opening your doors, maybe again, if you're a business, an organization, maybe your workplace, you're starting to open those doors again. And what, in many cases, I think that, you know, you're still dealing with the residue, of course, of what the first wave has brought. And I think the more prepared you were in the first place for something like this to happen, then you've actually been able to thrive massively. It's been an opportunity. And I know in our world, it's been a massive opportunity to keep fine-lining what we do and make sure that we can sort of do that in a bigger way. We work all the time online, just set up the rest of the year, computer plus internet and the fourth industrial revolution, access and communication. Yeah, so true. And here's the thing that I think if there's anything to focus on, in other words, like, we are looking at this not because we want to be doom and gloom, but if you were more prepared for the first wave, how would have that changed what you were thinking? How would have it changed the systems you had in place? How would it have changed the processes that you would have had in place, or the team, or the people, or the way that you do your workplace? Would have it been different? I would love to have like people to communicate about that, whether on the live or later. But here's the thing. the one thing I can say is a certainty, that the more prepared you are for the second wave, the more likely you too will see it as opportunity. You'll see it as a time of being able to do things and increase in a different way. But you have to be willing to be prepared. And I think a lot of that is coming down to some hard work right now, putting in place those systems that will support you, and looking at and identifying the gaps in your systems that maybe worked in a time before, but are not necessarily going to work where you need it to go going forward. Thank you for your question. I love that. Well, thank you for just being a part of this. And I wish I knew who you were, but like, I'm going to look later on Facebook and figure it out anyway. I think that's the thing. We need to ask these questions. And this is one of those questions that unless we start asking now, it's going to hit us again and we are going to be hit. And here's the thing. The first wave hit us really hard in many cases. Okay, so if a second wave comes, is that building going to stay firm, or is the second impact going to just hit it right down? And that's how we need to start thinking. I know a lot of you are just trying to cope with thinking now, but I do encourage that while you're thinking now, just begin to start thinking forward into the future a little bit. Because here's the thing, when we start being a little bit more future focused in our thinking and our questions and the decisions that we're making, we begin to look through a different lens and create things going, hey, even though we're focusing in here on this and this is what we're doing, we actually need this in place. We need to put this, work with our team so that they can handle these sort of situations. We need to change maybe your workplace and not even think about opening up those doors again, but going fully online. And, grateful for the COVID conversation and for what it made visible and undeniable here, even in the US. Pure possibility. I think there was a lot of fear around the COVID conversation. There was a lot of, I know when it immediately hit my world, my first impression here was my first thing. I always think it's funny what comes out of your brain when something hits. Mine was this, oh no, what if they close down the airlines and then those airlines are closed down for a longer period of time? And then what if we're stuck in Australia, that's where we are, forever, and I can't get out? I was like, how do I build a canoe? No, just kidding. Well, actually, I wasn't that kidding. But I really realized when it hit how that would affect my thinking, the way that, like, I started going, how's this changing my thinking? How's this changing where I need to put my focus in? And my priorities at the time were priorities. And here's the other thing, that now those priorities become something different. So even in my case, one of the priorities, I wanted to put a face-to-face event on, and it was going to be called Global Human Intelligence Conference. And when COVID hit, I had no intention to put on an event, like none at all. Seriously. And I'm not actually ready for it, as in, built this amazing community that's just so big that I could just put out one thing, burst to the world, and people will be at that table. But I found, and this is just honesty, vulnerability right this second, is that I knew that if there was ever a time that we need to change the conversation, that we need to look at how we are making our money at the table and our decisions at the table. And that might be in leadership, that might be in your teams, that might be in how you are changing from a business that was a face-to-face to an online business, to the model. Maybe you have to even change the model in which you teach, to shift it around to making it more relevant to where people need you solving their problems. And I knew that this was the time to do it. So, maybe that's like for you, that all of a sudden your priorities have had to change. Now with that, so does maybe the energy in which you put in. I know over this time, for those that have, like I asked a question the other day, about the pause. How, what's this pause been like you? To be honest, for me, this has not been a pause. This has been me actually working harder. Has it been a pause for you, this COVID time, this time that we've, had to, do a season in a different way? For me, it has not. In fact, I found that I had to support team in a way more intense way. I had to be on Zoom meetings so that I could be in the face of and communicating to help people to go on a pathway and be clear and certain on that, even though I had no idea where the world was going at the early times of when COVID hit. And so it meant that even though I might have wanted to shrink away, I might have wanted to hold back, I found that I was giving out more. So as a leader, as someone in your industry that is, or your workplace, are you giving out more? Are you finding that you're having to pull it out? So here's the thing, even with the event, like that's the whole thing, that we want to refuel. We want you to revamp, have a look at maybe what has worked, maybe what needs to work, and then go, how can you just ride the next wave in a way that is going to, and I keep talking about this, but increase your bottom line, because we need to be able to do that. Why? Because even if you're not struggling, there will be people who struggle out on the second wave. There will be people who are struggling even now, and the repercussions of what has happened over this time. What if you had access to finances that would be able to impact their world and help them not to be at the point where maybe they feel hopeless, isolated, and that they have no one who has their back? I don't know. I just wanted to start this conversation. I would love if you are on this live, if you are watching the replay, you start putting in some questions into the comments, some thoughts into the comments, some insights, and whatever you, if there's some interesting things and you want to have a conversation around this, I will check them out throughout the day in between meetings, and I will jump on tonight and do another decision table, or first thing again tomorrow morning, or both. So depending how much we get in the comments to what we will, how much we'll take with this conversation. Maybe it won't go anywhere. Maybe it's just me who's thinking about it. Maybe you're not. Although I do see someone from, the US and in Austin, which, by the way, I miss so much Austin right now. And I miss my beautiful colleagues, beautiful friends, my relationships and connections across the world. And to anyone out there today who are listening to this, big love to you right today. And know that even though I'm over here in Sydney, Australia, I love and adore every one of you. All right. Put your comments in. Let's keep this conversation going. And I'll see you after the meetings.